The call came while I was standing beside my wife's grave with rain dripping off the edge of my coat. My neighbor sounded out of breath. "Richard, your son-in-law changed the locks. Movers are inside the house right now. Your daughter's telling people you agreed to leave." I looked down at my wife's name on the wet headstone and tightened my grip on the phone. Then I said quietly, "Don't stop them. I need them to finish. Let me take you back to how it all started." After my wife Ellen died, the house changed in a way I still can't fully explain. It wasn't empty. It was quiet. There's a difference between the two. Empty feels abandoned. Quiet feels like someone just left the room and never came back. I built that house myself 40 years earlier. Every doorway, every cabinet, every uneven corner near the guest hallway, I touched all of it with my own hands. My wife used to tease me and say I trusted wood more than people. "Wood tells you when something's weak," she'd laugh. After she passed, I spent most mornings in my workshop restoring old furniture. Evenings were harder. I'd sit at the kitchen table listening to the refrigerator hum because silence felt heavier after dark. Then my daughter Megan called. She sounded nervous before she even asked. My son-in-law Kyle's business was falling apart. Bills were stacking up. They needed a temporary place to stay while they got back on their feet. "Just a few months, Dad," she said softly. I said yes before she finished the sentence. That first month almost felt normal again. My daughter cooked dinner twice a week. My son-in-law fixed the loose fence in the backyard. The television stayed on late again. I heard footsteps in the hallway instead of hearing my own breathing all night. One evening I stood in the kitchen while my daughter washed dishes and hummed to herself. For the first time since my wife died, the house sounded alive again. That's probably why I ignored the first warning sign. It happened during dinner. I couldn't find my reading glasses and checked beside my plate twice before my son-in-law picked them up from near my elbow. He smirked a little. "Might be time we start keeping a closer eye on you." My daughter laughed awkwardly. I smiled because I didn't want to make things uncomfortable. But after that, the comments started showing up everywhere. "You seem tired lately. You already told me that story. You forgot to lock the side door." Most of it came from my son-in-law. The rest slowly started coming from my daughter too. One afternoon he offered to help with my bills. "I handled finances for my company for years," he said casually. "Could make things easier for you." I told him I'd managed my own money just fine for almost 50 years. He laughed like I was being stubborn instead of insulted. A week later, he started answering the front door before I could. Then he started signing for my packages. Then he began telling repairmen what to do around the property without even asking me first. None of it sounded serious on its own. That's what made it dangerous. Every little thing had an explanation ready. Every boundary got crossed politely. The hardest part wasn't even him. It was watching my daughter slowly stop seeing it. One night during dinner, she asked if I should still be driving after dark. I looked at her across the table. I drove heavy equipment through snowstorms for 30 years. "I know," she said quickly. "We're just worried." That word became their shield. Worried. Everything disrespectful came wrapped inside concern. My son-in-law taped a grocery expense sheet inside the pantry and started tracking everything I bought. He asked about my medication, asked where I kept important paperwork, asked whether I'd updated my will recently. Each question sounded reasonable by itself. Together, they sounded like preparation. Then relatives started treating me differently too. At my nephew's birthday dinner, my sister leaned close and spoke slowly. "How have you been feeling lately, Richard?" Slowly, like I was fragile, like everyone had already been warned to be careful around me. I knew my son-in-law had been talking before my daughter accidentally confirmed it. We were cleaning dishes one night when she sighed and said, "He just worries because you've been forgetting things more lately." I dried my hands and looked at her. "What things?" She hesitated. "You know, little things." "No," I said calmly. "Tell me." But she couldn't, because there weren't any real examples. That night I sat alone in my workshop staring at an unfinished cabinet for almost 2 hours. Rain tapped against the windows while I kept replaying conversations in my head. That was the first moment I allowed myself to think something I didn't want to believe. Maybe this wasn't concern anymore. Maybe they were building something. After that, things got worse slowly, slow enough to make me question myself. My son-in-law started finishing my sentences in front of people. What Richard means is what he's trying to say. If I paused for even a second to think, he jumped in like I couldn't manage a conversation alone. Then one afternoon I came home from the hardware store and found my daughter inside my office opening folders on my desk. She froze when she saw me standing there. We were just organizing things. Nothing needed organizing. Later that night I noticed my desk drawers slightly open. My insurance paperwork had been moved. So had my tax documents. I didn't say anything, and my silence made my son-in-law more confident. A few days later he changed the alarm password. For safety, he said. Then he started talking about maintenance costs, like he already owned the place. One night at dinner he leaned back in his chair and looked around the kitchen. Honestly, this house is too much responsibility for one person. My daughter nodded quietly. That one hurt more than I expected. Not because of the house, because of the way she said it. Like I was already disappearing from my own life. A week later, my daughter scheduled a cognitive evaluation for me without asking. It's just for peace of mind. I looked at her. For whose peace? She looked down at the table. My son-in-law answered instead. We're trying to protect you. I stared at him for a second. Protect me from what? He smiled patiently. That same fake patient smile people use on children and elderly men they've already decided are confused. That night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight I walked downstairs for water and heard voices coming from the den. I stopped in the hallway. When I heard my son-in-law whisper, "The sooner he agrees to assisted living, the easier this gets." My daughter sounded uncertain. He's still independent. For now. I stood there in the dark listening to them discuss my future like I wasn't a person anymore. Like I was paperwork. That was the moment something changed inside me. The next morning I called an elder abuse attorney named Valerie Brooks. I didn't tell my daughter. I didn't tell anybody. I sat in Valerie's office for almost an hour explaining everything that had been happening. She listened quietly without interrupting. Then she asked me one question. "Do you think they're manipulating you emotionally?" she asked, "or preparing to control your assets?" I answered immediately. Both. That was the end of confusion for me. After that, I stopped arguing, stopped defending myself, stopped correcting them. Instead, I started preparing. Valerie helped me transfer ownership of the house into a protected trust. I hired a former electrician I trusted to install hidden cameras throughout the property. I started documenting every conversation, and most importantly, I let them keep underestimating me. If my son-in-law wanted me forgetful, I became forgetful. I repeated stories on purpose, pretended to lose paperwork, asked my daughter to remind me about appointments I already remembered perfectly. The weaker I looked, the more careless he became. People reveal themselves when they think they've already won. One afternoon I came home early from a supply run and found my son-in-law inside my private workshop taking pictures of financial records. He didn't even act embarrassed. "We're trying to protect you from yourself," he said. My daughter stood beside him. Silent. That silence hurt more than anything else. A stranger betraying you feels cruel. Your own child standing there and allowing it feels personal in a completely different way. After that, everything sped up. My son-in-law secretly toured assisted living facilities. Relatives started calling my daughter about plans for my care. Family dinners turned into quiet conversations about what would happen to the house. Eventually, at Thanksgiving, I overheard my son-in-law talking to my cousin in the hallway. Our property should be worth a lot once we renovate. Our property. Not my house. Not my home. Our property. And then came the final move. I drove out of town near my wife's birthday to visit her grave for the weekend. I always went alone. Saturday morning, my neighbor Frank called me. He sounded panicked. "Richard, there are movers at your place. Your son-in-law changed the locks." I closed my eyes. "Who authorized it?" "Your daughter says you agreed to all of this." In the background, I could hear tape guns sealing boxes. Frank lowered his voice. This feels wrong. I looked down at my wife's grave for a long moment. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Are police there yet? No. Good. That meant my son-in-law had gone far enough, I answered calmly. Don't stop them. I need them to finish. Frank went quiet. I hung up and called Valerie immediately. By the time I drove home the next day, everything was ready. My son-in-law had organized a full family intervention inside my own living room. My sister was there, 2 cousins, even one of my wife's old friends. My daughter sat stiffly on the couch with red eyes. My son-in-law stood near the fireplace holding a folder against his chest like a man already celebrating. When I walked in, he used that soft fake voice again. Richard, we all think it's time to discuss long-term care. I looked around, slowly. My furniture was stacked near the walls. Family photographs were packed into boxes. Strangers stood inside the home I built with my own hands. Then I sat down calmly in my chair. My son-in-law slid paperwork across the table. We found a wonderful assisted living community. Megan and I will handle selling the house. I looked at the papers but didn't touch them. And if I refuse? My daughter finally spoke. Dad, please don't make this harder. Harder, like my existence had become an inconvenience everybody needed. Solved. My son-in-law pushed the papers closer. You already agreed this was best. That was when the front door opened. Valerie walked in first. 2 police officers came in behind her. The room changed instantly. My son-in-law straightened up fast. What is this? Valerie placed a folder on the table. What this is, she said calmly, is an active elder fraud investigation. My daughter's face lost all color. My son-in-law gave a nervous laugh. This is ridiculous. One officer stepped forward. We have evidence of unlawful eviction, forged property documents, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. For the first time in months, my son-in-law looked at me differently. Not weak, not confused, not old, careful. Valerie pressed a button on a recorder. His voice filled the room. Once the house is sold, your father won't matter anymore. He'll be too confused to fight back. Nobody moved. My daughter looked at her husband like she didn't recognize him anymore. He immediately pointed at the recorder. That recording's illegal. No, Valerie answered. It isn't. Then I finally spoke, calmly. The house was transferred into a protected trust 3 months ago. Neither of you can sell it. My son-in-law's face changed instantly. I continued. You forged paperwork. You changed locks illegally. You removed property that didn't belong to you. One of the officers opened another folder, filled with still photographs from the hidden cameras, dates, times, pictures of movers, pictures of my son-in-law inside my office, pictures of him coaching my daughter before family meetings. Everything. Looked at my daughter. I knew what this was the day he started trying to convince people I couldn't trust my own memory. Tears filled her eyes immediately. Dad, I raised my hand gently. No, listen. The room went completely silent. You thought grief made me weak. You thought being lonely meant I'd hand over control just to keep people close. Nobody spoke. I looked directly at my daughter. Your mother and I raised you to stand beside family, not manage them like property. My son-in-law suddenly stood up. This is insane. One of the officers stopped him before he got 2 steps. They arrested him right there beside my wife's piano. No yelling, no dramatic fight, just handcuffs clicking shut while the room stayed dead silent. Even while they walked him toward the door, he kept talking, still trying to explain, still trying to control the situation with words. Some people never stop believing they can talk their way out of consequences. After the police left, nobody in the room knew what to say. Then my daughter finally started crying. Not loud crying, the kind where someone realizes too late how far things have gone. I thought he was helping us, she whispered. And the worst part was, I believe she meant that. My son-in-law used greed openly. My daughter used denial. But both of them still helped destroy trust inside that house. Removed her temporary inheritance access through the trust until she rebuilt trust on her own. Son-in-law's business collapsed within months once the Investigation became public. Investors backed out. Lawsuits followed. Turns out people don't like doing business with men who prey on widowers. As for me, I sold the house myself, not because they forced me out, because I was tired of defending my right to live peacefully inside it. Bought a smaller lake house 2 hours north, built a woodworking shed behind it, started restoring old furniture again. The quiet there felt different, not lonely, just calm. About 8 months later, my daughter came to visit alone. I was sitting on the dock restoring an old toolbox my wife had given me years earlier when I heard footsteps behind me. Daughter stopped near the edge of the dock. This time she didn't walk into my home without asking. She waited. I noticed that before anything else. I didn't know if you'd want to see me, she said quietly. Looked at her for a long moment. She looked tired, older somehow, not from age, from finally seeing things clearly. The sun was coming up over the lake, turning the water gold. After a few seconds, I moved the toolbox aside and pointed to the empty chair beside me. The invitation belonged to me now, and for the first time in a very long time, so did the peace. Kindness is only weakness to people who mistake patience for permission. I didn't get my life back through anger. I got it back by refusing to surrender my dignity, just because someone decided I was easier to control than to respect.